And here we go. The Crushing Iron podcast is back.
Welcome back. Well, I would say welcome back to our listeners. It is Wednesday, September 15th, 2021. Welcome aboard. We are again at two different places. You are in the marvelous city of Paducah, Kentucky. I am back in Chattanooga at the hub. We were traveling last week, so we are definitely a little bit behind schedule. We traditionally come to you on Mondays and Thursdays. This might be the latest we've ever gone in a week. Today's Wednesday. I don't know that we've ever pushed this far back in a week. Do you?
Yeah, I think we have once.
We have once. Yeah, well, might as well make it twice. Who knows? But the most important thing is we come to you twice a week. Hey, you are in Paducah. You're back today, right?
Yeah, coming back
Are you,
today.
are you anxious? Are you anxious to be back in Chattanooga, which is hosting the big Ironman here next weekend?
Dude.
I'm not sure putting any pressure on you because you're racing, but still.
Yeah, this last weekend ramped up my anxious level about 10 times.
Well, we were spectating Ironman Wisconsin. I know that we'll get out of here in a minute, but before we get rocking and rolling again, like we said, September 15th, 2021. Welcome aboard, folks. We are Crushing Iron Podcast 512. Is that correct?
That is correct.
512, and we were up in Madison, Wisconsin this last weekend for the first full that you and I have been together for what seems like, was it Louisville back in 19? Was that the last full that we spectated? I believe it was. I believe because that was what, mid-October of 19, and then that was it. We spectated a few halves this year, been to a few halves, and then obviously we had athletes participate at the end of 2020 in Ironman Florida, but we weren't down there. So this was our first experience spectating an event together and a full in general in 2 years. I know we were going to go into that for the most part today, kind of give our reflections on the race itself, as it was the first time that they've had the 70.3 and the full in the same day. I know you and I both have a lot of opinions on how that went. Now, just from a spectator standpoint, but also now that I've gotten feedback from multiple athletes on how they thought the day went, and then obviously, anytime you spectate an Ironman and you're around a city, I know it's obviously one of your favorite cities. It's also one of mine. Watching athletes, getting to meet new people, meeting listeners for the first time. It's always a great, fun experience, and just watching the drama unfold throughout the day really brings back a lot of memories. Before we roll into that today, if it's your first time tuning in, welcome. We know you have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general, so we appreciate you giving us your time. We cover it all. We cover swim, bike, run specific podcasts. We'll do race recaps, which will be kind of similar to what we'll do today. We'll do race previews, which we'll do next week for Ironman Chattanooga, which is here in our hometown. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through, what our athletes are going through. Sometimes we'll also hop into our Facebook group, which you can search Crushing Iron Group, answer one simple question, and we'll let you right in. A lot of awesome people in there, and the chatter level has been steadily rising here towards the end of the year with a bunch of races rock and rolling in September. So be a part of that group. There's everything from people who haven't participated in a race yet, who are looking to do their very first triathlon ever, to all the way up through mid-pack, back of the pack, and then even Ironman champions. So a really awesome group. But that's it. We have no sponsors. We have no ads. We have one agenda though, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yep, you're right, man. That group is popping in there, and so is our Instagram, C26 Triathlon.
Oh, what nice job weaving that in there. Well done. I had a lot of people because listen, it's been a week since we've done our last podcast, and we did the podcast last Wednesday for our Thursday release, all about Ironman Wisconsin. At that point, I was not going. I wasn't making the trip. I was a little jealous of you making the trip. I was missing out. I was having some major, I think the millennials call it FOMO, about not being a part of the event. And then I got off the podcast and was talking to you for a little bit, and I was like, I think I'm going. I think I'm going to go. Pulled up the old Best Western Premier Park Hotel, which is the C26 preferred accommodations for Ironman Wisconsin, and they had a room available, and I took that as a sign. So I made my way up there, and was just reminded almost immediately how it is one of my favorite cities to be in. It's absolutely gorgeous, and the race itself was great. We'll get into that, but I was happy to make the trip up there. Like we said before, when we got started, it's been a while. It's been a while at race, but I figured, hey, Ironman Chattanooga is next weekend. We got, I think, all said on our team 50 plus athletes from all of our coaches and club members participating. It's here in our hometown. The hub is just a few minutes from the race course itself. So I figured this is it could be like my last peak, my last big day, kind of like my race, my spectator rehearsal day for Ironman Chattanooga. So I figured I might as well dust things off, get myself back in the groove, and get ready for this weekend.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I needed it. That was the one thing I put down as a note is I was rusty spectating Ironman.
Oh,
And
big time. Me too.
yeah, I was all over. I was kind of, the tracker was popping and I was kind of getting confused a lot out there. And of course the 70.3 confused me more, but like I, it was just, yeah, I think it was, you get in a group because by that time, usually, you've done a lot of different, I don't know, I've done races and I've been around a lot more stuff. I feel like, and that full Ironman though, that experience is, it just blows. I mean, I like 70.3s racing them and everything, but the spectator side of that is so much different up at Wisconsin specifically. And just to be around that many people that were, um, you know, had gone through so much to get there. I mean, like that 2 years, and I was talking to you beforehand, I said, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people struggle out here just because it's been so long, for this type of a race and this kind of energy. And I think the emotions kind of like doubled in some ways. I think it was just, people who weren't used to racing it by then, it's just been a long time. And I think that really played a part on the psyche of a lot of people. Or maybe I was just reading that on myself because I just, like I said, man, I usually go to an Ironman. I'm like, man, when I'm spectating, I feel like I'm not ready to do one. And I definitely had that feeling, even though I should be. It's like, it's different when you got the gear on, you know what I mean? Rather than walk around in flip
You
flop.
no, you were right on the money, and I had the same feeling and vibe watching people. You and I sat together, and we'll talk about some of the things in a minute, but it's been a long time, and a lot of people say, well, Ironman and long distance triathlon is declining and whatever, and I think people forget, like as much as people talk about doing 70.3s and talk about training for Ironman, I, to be honest with you, I think to an extent it has softened the appearance of how absolutely difficult it is to
Totally.
compete
Yeah.
in one. Like the more people, it's no longer like at least I mean back when I used to race a lot, it was everyone thought Ironman was super. It was just very difficult and impossible. Not just from like your family who doesn't count because they still don't know what you do. Like they're like, oh, what are you doing? You do it all in one day and you do it consecutively. Like they don't really count. It's like your other athletic peers or people around you and where you are professionally or close friends like I think people are starting to kind of get a feeling that it's more doable. It's easier. It's not. It's the same distance, right? That it's always been. I
Hmm.
think people have honestly gotten um it's the appearance of it again like I think the appearance of Iron Man has been marketed softer than it usually was because listen, like we go back and forth on this all the time. Like it's a business, right? Iron Man, the brand, is a business. Yes, the distance is something that you have to complete, but it's a business. So if you want more people to participate and be gravitated towards your business and to be consumers, you need to make things seem accessible. Like it's not a very good business model to advertise, hey, this is going to be super impossible, but sure, shell out $800, sign up for it, come to the race, and then we'll just see what happens. Like that's not a very good model. But what I think it's doing, and even just the way that they're creating some of the race. Like I was like the moment I got pulled into Madison on Friday, I walked up to the terrace. It's like, cause the first thing I want to do is get my eyes on the water. It's just like I love the water there. I love everything. I love the city. So I went right up there, and it was in the middle of an athlete briefing, and the guy that was doing it he started going to swim and he goes, oh, he goes, raise your hand about, how many people have done, mass starts and, like no one raised their hands. I'm thinking like, I think the year you and I did it together was the last year that they had the mass start there.
I think.
And he was like, yeah, well, we're not doing that anymore, and you'll be glad because this one's a lot more fun. It's a lot safer. And I'm thinking that's ludicrous. It's ludicrous, especially, and we'll go into this in a minute, especially just watching the day unfold and the swim unfold from up top. It's not safer. I think, and so I just think that the appearance has in how things have been marketed and just talked about, and then you combine that with just how far away people have been training. It's been 2 years for these people, and while 2 years sounds like a long time, there's still, to be honest, like in just the last 2 to 3 months, there's still been like this level of hesitancy and uncertainty about really going all in and dedicating enough time and energy and commitment to your training, because you're kind of hedging your emotional bet, because it might get canceled again, right? Because things have looked, more difficult for other things. They might be canceled, they might not be. And to be honest with you, I think while the last 2 years people have been waiting until their race, and that time between races has been difficult, to be fair and to be totally transparent, I think people have begun to take the distance for granted, and I think people are going into these events, I don't want undertrained and underprepared, because, and I said this to quite a few people on race day. And listen, Wisconsin is, we talked about it last week. Like, we weren't trying to scare people. We were just simply like laying out the facts.
Yep.
Wisconsin is the fairest of them all. It is the fairest courses you're going to find. You don't get a freebie in the swim. You sure as hell don't get any freebies on the bike. And if you get off the bike and you've conquered both of those, you still got to run a freaking marathon, right? Like, after you've done, like, you just can't, you don't get a pass at this race. Like, even in Chattanooga, like, you come here next weekend, if we've had any rain, even if we hadn't had any rain, it's going to be wetsuit legal. You're going to get at least a no current, no chop swim. That's a straight shot line. It's a fast swim. And even the bike course, in my opinion, is fairly, it's not easy, but it is not hard. Okay, it is not a difficult bike course. That's the opposite at Wisconsin. And when you start off with the two legs that are basically unforgiving, and they're going to really highlight any cracks in your training and your preparation, it's going to make for a very, very, very long day. And you touched on this, on the outset, is like, I also just think that we forget not just the effort and the amount of time and the preparation that goes into this event, but I also just think being mentally prepared to know that the day is going to be so difficult. When you haven't done it in a long time, you forget. And I think that plays a huge part in how your own personal psyche kind of roller coasters through the emotions of the day.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right, dude. And I'm so glad I was there, because I think it did give me a little bit of a wake up call. I mean, I've been working, man, it's hard to say what I've been doing for Chattanooga, but like you said, I think especially if you've done it before a few times, you kind of get this feeling like, all right, well, I know I can do it or whatever. But then the reality of it is, and I'll be honest, we were standing at the top of the helix at the swim exit, and I kept staring at people and seeing the look in their eyes, and I was like, that look, I remember how that, because sometimes that water can be choppy, and it was a little choppy, and I think it got to some people. But for me, the thing that stood out as someone who's going to race, a little over a week, is I kept watching them grab those bike bags, and all I could think about was, man, they're getting on a bike to go ride 112 miles, which 114, which a lot of people told me, but on a tough bike course after swimming that, like with the look on their face. So that idea of like going, okay, well, suck it up again. That's like the theme of the day for stuff like this. And I started really getting that feeling in my stomach, as in, boy, this is just going to be like, and you talked about it before, but it's like, it's so many body punches out there, and it's like, how many are you just going to be able to get through? But watching him grab that bike bag, to me, was the theme of the day in my head. Was like that feeling of getting on the bike after that and getting out there and knowing that you got to ride over 100 miles is like, oh man, it really kind of woke me up, even though it, but it really was real when I was watching it. And as we know, the bike course did give a lot of people trouble, as it normally would. I mean, it's a rough ride and whatever, but to see it and be right on it like that, I was really getting like what you said about highlighting the cracks in your training, you know, because I think that's what it started doing to me. It's like, you know, you can have all these moments in your own training and think, yeah, I can do it. You know, I've just run 4 hours. I can go do that, whatever. But it doesn't string it all together. And that's the big piece, right? Go out and ride 4 hours is one thing, but to do it after a swim like that and then run, it's just, it's definitely a reminder right in my face.
Dude, Ironman is effing hard. Like I don't know when we got to the point to where, and let me be honest with you, is like I think a lot of it has to do with like I'm just gonna go from basically not doing any races, not doing any triathlons to I'm gonna do one sprint and then I'm gonna jump to a full, and because and then knock it out of the way. Like, dude, these are hard. Like in there are a few races across, at least in the U.S., that honestly I feel like as an athlete that I could probably sign up for tomorrow and go do and just make my way through it and survive. Wisconsin is not one of those. I had no disillusions. Like, yeah, maybe I could ride a bike today and go out and do this. Hell no, no way. Like Florida, Arizona, Texas, like those three courses specifically, like, you know, they're flatter, they're faster, they usually have, you know, decent weather. Like you can listen, you can probably fake your way through a little bit of training and show up on race day and come in underneath the cutoff and come out of the swim not feeling too bad, or come off the bike and not, you know, torch yourself. You could probably get away with, you know, not taking things as seriously, or maybe, you know, overestimating your time availability or your commitment or what it takes to do one of these, and probably make your way through it. Wisconsin? Nope. Like from the moment you got on the water, it's hard. Like, and the two loops from there, because they had the 70.3, so they made it two loops. Like the second loop alone is, and this is why I say, like, stop telling me mass starts are safer. Stop telling me that, because if you watch the 70.3 and the full collide, it was an absolute clusterfuck. Excuse my language. It was absolutely disastrous. You had people on the first loop that were starting out and started their second loop as people who were coming in and their rolling start, the slower swimmers. You know, if we do the rolling start, then we will give the people in self-seating yourself, you'll have more time and more space. Oh, by the way, here's what we're going to do. We're also going to make it two loops. And so those of you who thought you're going to have nice, clean water to swim through with other people swimming around you, we're going to ease you into the water. We're going to herd you in, and then, oh, look, here comes a herd of wolves behind you swimming 50 to 55-minute Ironman times who are going to swim all the way over you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's not safe either. Like that's more unsafe than doing a mass start. So don't tell me that it's safer. And so that was problematic. But from the time you got in, from the fastest swimmers and then the swimmers who were all the way towards the back, we watched this happen from the top of the terrace. Is the people who started at the very end, for the Ironman. So what they did is they started the Ironman at 6:45, and they started at 7.3 at what, 8:30.
Something
So
like
it took them a while to get people in the water for the full Ironman. So the last people who you would think, more than likely are going to be ones that might need the most time in the water to complete it. They got done with their first loop, and as they were starting just the outbound stretch of loop 2, here comes the lead pack of the 70.3 athletes. Like, do you think that was good for anyone? Nope,
that.
it wasn't. So that was, in that again, that was the nitpicky part I had on for the course, was just that it was an absolute nightmare in the swim. I think from what I heard in terms of bike course, it was actually fine. But it's not safer. But from the minute you got in the water, it's hard. The minute you start your first stroke of the day, it's going to be a long day. And I honestly think that people have really gotten mesmerized by the word and the phrase and the acknowledgement that comes with being an Ironman finisher, and that's all they think about. The finish, how they're going to be, how they're going to be not rewarded, but like how people are going to see them, and they can add Ironman finisher. Like, it takes so much freaking work. Like, you just can't overestimate how hard the day is going to be. Like, I would rather you overestimate and over prepare, not overtrain, but over prepare, and just and really understand how difficult the day is going to be, than just think you can just kind of make your way through it. It's not that. It's incredibly. Not only is it incredibly hard, but you also have to have luck to have a good day. And that's just part of it. Like you just like I kind of have this like internal formula in my head. Like when every single athlete that I work with, I had this kind of like number scale in my head about when we start working together, how things like progress, like where I feel like their number is going to be. Like and I was kind of going through this. I have a guy that I coach who's was asking me questions about a full he's doing, and I said, listen, I said, athletically, you're a 9 guy. You're a 9-hour guy. Like athletically, you have what it takes to race a full at a 9. Life-wise and professionally, you're an 11 guy. You're an 11-hour guy. Your time is limited. Your schedule is crazy. It just your life isn't conducive to, you know, consistent 12 to 14-hour weeks year round, to where you got this going. So your work's that way and your life's that way. So what that comes out for me is probably around a 10, right? Because you average out 9 and 11, you're averaging out a 10, right? You're a 10 kind of guy. And that's how I look at most. But then I also clue in, like, how consistent how, and I put that in like the athletic ability box. Like if you're, not, because athletic potential really doesn't get you much of anywhere unless you apply it, unless you do the work to, be able to express it. You could take a guy who was a high school and collegiate football player, and incredibly athletic, and if they haven't done crap in 5 years, then who cares? He probably can't run a mile without getting winded and having to walk, right? So you have to be able to do those things. So, and then you have athletes who are probably a 11 on the Ironman hour scale. Like they have 11. That's just them. But they have their life and their personal life and their professional life is set up to an extent to where they can train so well. They may be they have the ability to train like a person who would need to get in the 9s. Therefore, they end up in the 10s. But then you also have people who have the ability to be a 10 in the 10 or 11 Ironman, range finisher, but their commitment level and their consistency and their motivation falls somewhere in the 15s. And that ends up getting them about a 12 or a 13. But all they think about, and this is very true for most people, all we get consumed about is what we think we can do, what we hope we can do. You don't really know that until you peel back the layers of what are you willing to do and what are you going to do, because so many people fantasize about, as soon as they hit the button, everything that they do, every post that they make, everything is centered around being an Ironman. And because you know what, that's easy. It's easy to do those things. You know what's not easy? Not missing workouts, getting up early, eating right, getting your sleep, being committed, being consistent, not cutting every one of your rides or your run short because of whatever, not making excuses. Like, those are the hard things. But so you have to be, but again, like we don't live in a world where people like to be realistic about what's going to happen. They like to live in fantasy land and Instagram filters about, well, hey, well, I'm pretty sure I can do this. Can you? Because what's your training tell you? And there's nothing wrong with going to the race being optimistic, but be a realist with yourself. And the more people, the more athletes that can be a realist with themselves, they will see themselves complete and be able to conquer and probably do better than what they had originally hoped. But you can't go into a race and taking your 10 or 11-hour, what you think is an Ironman ability, and giving it a 16-hour training day and expecting to get anything better than a 13. Or even if you're a 13-hour, 14-hour person, if you get one stroke of bad luck, you're not going to make it. Right. So it's just, there's so much that goes into it. I just think the more real you can be with yourself. And again, it's not about what you want to do or what you hope you can do or what you think you can do. It's about what are you willing to do and what can you do. And those are the important things that end up honestly determining how well or not well you're going to do on race day.
Mm-hmm. And if I could take us, I think it was back to last podcast or the one before, when we talked about get down to the water, find a 10, 15 minutes and, breathe and get in your place and all that kind of stuff. And I think one of the things with exactly what you're saying is about how people sign up or whatever. And then, you get up there and like, it feels like the 3 days beforehand are more like, wait, did I get my gear bag? Did I do, like it's all these logistics and all these kind of things. And we kind of feel like, okay, we're just going to have a rolling start. We're going to roll in the water and start this race or whatever. But back to my thought starts is I was talking to somebody about that, and why I liked them so much is because when they had the mass start, you could go in the water. I think it was like up to 30 minutes beforehand and just kind of tread water and swim around and get loose and whatever. And for me, that was my 15, 20 minutes. I would just tread water and I would really get centered, and I would kind of like, and on the task at hand rather than just sort of like, saying goodbye to somebody and giving a high five and walking into this water. And then all of a sudden you got people swimming all over, you're not even in the moment really. And I think that with the mass start again, and the reason I belabor is because I really like it. And I think it was good because I always used to have a lot of swim anxiety, but when I get out there for about 15 minutes and tread water and just be one with the environment and have a little time for my body to kind of adjust to what was going on there, it really helped. And I think like when people say they're afraid of it, and it was just so easy to explain, if you're going to be slower, stay off to the right or stay in the back. And then everybody kind of goes away from you. You got clear water, and it's the same for people in the front or whatever. You can find your space. But that idea of just kind of getting up there and, it's so it is. It's like I think we get kind of trapped by the pre-race activities sometimes, and we forget. I mean, we're nervous about it. You got to kind of lock yourself in at some point and realize that this is not going to be easy, and it's going to take a lot of digging deep from the minute you get in that water. And that doesn't mean like you have to go as hard as you can, but it's going to be have to like stay in your lane, stay in your boat, stay in your box. There's the focus of that, because we talk about it all the time when you're training. Sure enough, you're on a bike, and the minute you start daydreaming or whatever, you're going to hit a pothole flat or whatever the case. And those like mental engagements about doing an Ironman are so important, and it's so easy to get distracted and kind of forget what's even going on or what's ahead of you, for some people up to 17 hours, but and times
the illusion that I think the rolling start gives us all, athletes, coaches, whoever, is that this is just your day. You can go along and basically do this race unimpeded, untouched, unbothered, from all the other 2,500 people out there. That's not the case. Your day is more than likely going to be impacted by someone else in some way, shape, or form, right? Like, what would you want to do? Would you want to be dropped into a 3,000 member of a team race, or 3,000 individual selfish Type A people? I'll take the first one, Alex. I'll rather be like dropped in the master. Be like, all right, I understand what's going on. We're all in this for ourselves. Like this, yes, I can wade in the water wherever I want to be, but ultimately, I'm racing along with 2,500 people today, and they have their own aspirations, they have their own goals, they have their own agenda, and some of them may or may not want to stop for me. Some of them may, there are plenty of people that have their day ruined because of someone else. Like there's so much that goes into it that this year is going to be, there's going to be. I saw visibly a lot of rude awakenings at Wisconsin. I saw
yeah.
a lot of rude awakenings and punches in the mouth. That was, oh shit, like, yeah, like I've had 2 years, but this is hard. Like crap. Like I thought I could just kind of, because all my other friends have done it and they do this, and like I just thought I could do this.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, there's also nothing wrong with not being able to. I just think we like, because listen, like we had somebody post in the group, I think yesterday, that was talking about, how do I deal with the DNF, right? How do I deal with not finishing? And kind of flip the script. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, there are so many different ways and layers to look at the label of did not finish. Like, it's got nothing to do with who you are as a person, right? It's got absolutely zero to do with who you are as a person. It probably doesn't have anything to do with who you are even athletically. It's just how the day unfolded. And there are so many different types of ways to not finish. You can have a mechanical, you could get sick, you could be hurt, you could just readily acknowledge that you didn't train enough, or you could, because here, that's the other thing is like, and I see this so many times as a coach, like people commit to something way before anyone would really advise them that this is probably part of the smart trajectory. Like, but we live in a society where we just want to go all in quickly and get it done with. You know, I want to go big or go home. You know, and I'm gonna jump from this to that. Like, but you forget how early people are on in their athlete kind of life cycle and how much more work that needs to be done. And while 2 years sounds like a long time, it ain't. It is not that long of a time to prepare for something as grueling as a 70.3 or a full. And so, like, you know, if you found yourself not finishing for whatever reason was it, I think it's fair, and it should be something that you're comfortable with. Is like, did I overcommit? You know, was my, you know, what, just because you want to do it doesn't mean it's right for your life. It doesn't mean it's something that's going to fit in. And I think a lot of people have a hard time reconciling that. Is like, yes, I signed up for it. Does it fit in my life? Well, no, it was horrific. Like, you know, or you could have had injuries or family or job loss or divorce or whatever, or moving, whatever it is that could have caused you to, like, you know, take a step back in your training. But at least you went out and gave it the college try, right? Because, like, for every person that goes out and gives it their all and fails at, you know, and quote unquote fails to finish, there's the same amount of people who didn't even come to the starting line, who didn't even come to athlete check-in because they were scared. They were scared they couldn't do it. They were scared of what was going to happen. Like, give yourself some credit for just getting in the water, making it to race day healthy, and giving it a go. Like, there's just so many different layers of DNF, right? Is it you didn't finish because you didn't train well enough? Did you not finish because you know, had a whole lot of life happen to you or some injuries to where you were just kind of hoping you could make it through? There's that kind of do not finish. There's a mechanical do not finish. And then there's also the I quit do not finish. I just don't have it today. Or I don't want to do this anymore. And then there's also the you know, mental, emotional, I just don't know that I can do this any longer today. There are just so many. There is, like, it's not a failure. You're not a quitter unless you just look at yourself and think, I quit, you know, for no reason at all. And so to me, that's the one you should be concerned about. It's like, I just quit today for no reason. I just don't want to do it. That's the one. All the other ones, shit happens. Everyone's going to DNF at some point. If you race long enough and do enough races, like, you're going to DNF. That's just how it is. Not everything is in our control. So don't beat yourself up about it. But also, like, if you find yourself in, like, the I probably didn't train well enough, or I thought this was going to cut it, like, do the straight up reality check and think, all right, was my mind and my, you know, my ego or my pride a little bit further out than my training was? Probably. Okay, well, then let's figure it out, and we can either make it work, or I can also just have that nice conversation with myself and be like, you know what, this isn't right for me right now. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. I don't have the you know, the availability to put forth the effort to do what I need to do. And you know what? That's also okay. It takes a big, mature, responsible person to have that conversation with themselves and move on to do something that they can succeed at and they can do well at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of people find out maybe that, you know, they're not into the sport, or they're not into, you know, they went through it all and then they find out whatever, this is not. But there's also this triathlon that it's kind of this under the surface deal, but a lot of it is just going through process, right? You know, you learn, and like I was talking to one of my athletes about how, you know, she had a really good race, and but I think just by doing it, she's already a lot better going into the next one, you know. So there's things that you learn no matter what, and I think that's how you know, you creep up your age group and things like that. It's ways that just going through the experience and learning. And I think if you DNF'd or whatever, you had a struggle like that, you know, that's part of the process too, you know. And if you still want to do it, you're going to come back next time and know a lot more stuff, and know a lot more things that it takes to where you want to get. And I think the hard part is about anything really is going through the process and having sort of bad days or fail, I call them, or, you know, but they're not, but they're just learning experiences. And that's just part of the game. You know, some people are more prepared for that than others. And I think, I mean, I will go, I mean, back to the idea of this mental side of Ironman. And, you know, every time we were right at the turnaround of the run, right? And every single person that came by was like, man, I don't know if I got, this is gonna suck. Yeah, it is. So just keep it right here and suck it
Yeah,
up,
that's right.
because
Exactly right.
no,
And
because it just is, man. I'm like there's not many people that go into that second loop. I don't care how good they are, and it's all relative to their training and their experience and their shape and everything. But it always sucks because it's just where you're at, and you have to be mentally ready to dig in there. That's just how it is, man. And I don't think a lot of people are ready for that. You know what I mean?
whether you're going a 7-minute mile or a 14-minute mile, if you're rounding that corner at mile 13, you're in pain and you're uncomfortable. That's just a fact. Like you said, like it doesn't matter the speed. It's you've already swam 2.4, biked 112, and ran a half marathon. You ain't gonna feel good. Like it's just no one feels good. It's just the amount of pain and the amount of being in the level of being uncomfortable that they can actually manage and try and stave off to where it really starts to affect what they have for the day. And listen, like an Ironman is so much like everybody, like the people that I saw, like, how's the day going? I was like, listen, like an Ironman is just like life. Good days, bad days, and everything in between. The day is so hard and so difficult that rarely ever as a coach, same for 70.3s, are you going to have a lot of athletes show up and all have great days? If you do, then you just got incredibly lucky, and so did your athletes. Like that's just a fact. More than likely, you're going to have great days, bad days, and in between days. And that's just how it is. But you have to be because that's how difficult and unpredictable the day is. Like if you're a person that continuously tries to predict your Ironman time, like stop. And you because you probably haven't done enough to know that there's so much of that's out of your control: weather, wind, dew point, humidity, terrain, other people. How are you really feeling that day? How's your nutrition going? Can you take in fluids? How's your, like these are all things that affect your day
Long
that you,
transitions,
what's that?
unexpected long transitions.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Too. Like Wisconsin was like, if you were under 10 minutes, it was like you were crushing everyone else. Like it was incredibly long. Like, and that's just, it's just you trying to predict how the day is going to go and expect and assume it's a recipe for disaster. It's like, we said a few weeks ago, it's like, it's like training by miles per hour. It's like, where your hopes and dreams go to die, because you're going to dig yourself a hole and be so dejected and so disappointed because you're not being able to meet this standard that you set out for yourself that you just pulled out of thin air more than likely anyway, that it's just going to mentally eat at you. Um, and then there also comes a point to where you have to do what's best for yourself. Like, and if you pull out of a race because you're hurting or nutrition, like always weigh it. What is it really worth it? Like, who cares if you don't finish? Honestly, like that's just part of it. Like, if you race long enough, that's part of it. Like, I encouraged an athlete on Sunday to drop out. I said, dude, like it's not worth it. Like, call it a day. We sat on the curb, we talked, we shed a few tears about some things, and I was like, dude, like go turn your chip in. And this is a guy who hasn't DNF'd and hasn't a race ever. Has been racing since '92. He's been to Kona. He's on podiums, like just like in Tulsa. And you look at him, and that's the I think the part of coaching in that I think people underestimate, or at least don't think about in the way that I kind of see people on race days. When I come to a race, and I know you're the same way. When I go to a race and I see people on course and I don't see athletes. I don't see triathletes. I don't see people trying to PR. I see humans. And I see and what I choose to say or not to say, how I choose to act or not to act on race day when I see an athlete is what I feel like they need to see and hear, or the presence they need to feel as a human, not as an athlete. Like I'm not I mean, this should come as no surprise. I'm not like a rah-rah coach with signs and and clowny, a clown wig and like megaphone and I try to dish out what I think you need to hear, the presence you need to feel when I feel like you're probably going to need it. And it's always something calm. But when I see athletes, I don't look at them as an athlete trying to PR. I don't look at them. I mean, I don't actually know a single solitary PR of any of my athletes. Because as long as they're happy, I'm happy. But you look at a person and you think, and I was sitting on the curb with this athlete, and I just kept looking at them and thinking, like, I don't want you to go any further, to be honest with you, because I don't know that it's going to do you any good. I don't know that it's going to, yeah, like, but I've never had a DNF. So, like, that's also could be a bad thing. It might means you're suffering so much through the race just to not have one. You might be doing yourself more damage. What, just to not have one? And so I just suggest, I think we pack it in, turn around, go to that return aid station and grab some more food and fuel, go find the med tent and call it a day and just go. It was 100% the right decision. You have to take care of yourself, and you can't, like, we get so wrapped up in what other people are going to think or what other people are going to see and how important. And yes, is finishing important? Sure it is, but also making good decisions is smart, right? And is a good thing. Like, we should always put ourselves above everything else. How to take care of our body, how to take care of our soul, and in the back half, even honestly, even the whole marathon, in my opinion, asks just as much of you mentally and emotionally as it does for you physically. You have to have everything with you in order to be able to do it. You can't have any cracks. Nowhere. You can't have any cracks in your training. You can't have any cracks where you are mentally or where your heart is or how you're feeling emotionally, because every crack you have will be just like jackhammered out by the exhaustion and the enormity of the day. And a lot of times, just having the wherewithal to be like, I just don't have it today. It might suck. It might be difficult, but you're going to wake up a week later and be, in my opinion, so much happier and so relieved knowing that you didn't just continuously batter yourself and beat yourself up into the ground for just to finish, when you might end up worse off in the long run. Like, maybe it's just time to take time to heal or to take space from the sport or do whatever. Like, take that time. Who cares if you finish? Like, it's important, but like in the scheme of things, a week later, no one else is going to know and no one else is going to remember except for you. So, like, we have to continuously watch out for ourselves or know that we have family, friends, teammates, coaches that look out for who you are, not what we do, because triathlon is what we do. It's not who we are. And the more I see people just try to or end up misidentifying their self-worth and who they are by what they do, the more dangerous it becomes, because then not meeting goals or not being on podiums or not consistently setting PRs or always finishing becomes more about their definition of who they are as an individual and as a person, more so than it is just how a hobby went on a weekend that we paid $1,000 to do. And that's
Yeah.
it, and that becomes just, it's a very, very, very fine line. And I will tell you this from 15 plus years of experience. I've had my share of DNFs and I've coached my way and I've coached plenty of DNFs. And I can tell you right now that the athletes who are in this sport the longest, they are the ones who don't take the sport too seriously and don't use it as a way to reflect who they are as people. It's a
Mm.
hobby that they do. It's a healthy, great way, to kind of fill time in their lives, to be healthier, to stay motivated, to be part of a process, to get fit, to set a good example. And yeah, it's fun to compete. It's fun to do all things, but it is not a definition of who you are, right? It's like you had. It's like when you go to people's funeral, they rarely ever highlight the greatest day that person's had or the worst day that person's had. It's more about just the random ass days and the memories that person probably doesn't even like recall. It's in the gray. Like that you're the sum of everything that you do, not one day. Because pinning your whole life and your dreams and reaching a goal or finding self-worth based on one day, you sure are putting a whole hell lot of eggs in one damn basket, right? And expecting a lot out of it. And I think that's where so many athletes get into trouble.
Hmm. Well, I think there's the nature of sort of a lot of high, and I was one of them where it's high a transition in my life rather than looking at it as something that was genuinely transforming my life in a way that would make, other parts of my life better or whatever. You have that, that tie to that metal that's going to like define you or something. And so I get it. And it's really hard to I have a goal and I don't hit it. I take it personally on myself, but that's something I always have to work through personally. But you hope that you can do certain things, and if you don't, you have to be able to let it go, because like you said, I mean, there's too many. Anyway, so at the end here, should we shift gears? Because I think I mean, for me, it was just, after like kind of a get that feeling back to, why you love being around the sport, and why I almost love spectating as much as racing, and just being around the stuck out to you in a really cool way about being back in Madison. I mean, the memories, and just, it's so weird to think that that's where we started too, you and me, really. And, that kind of stuff. I was reminiscing, like late at night, I was out trying to find food, and and everything was closed. It was about 11 o'clock. Everything was shutting down. And, and I was out walking around the Capitol, and it was, as you can imagine, pretty sparse at that hour. And there was like one volunteer at the third corner. Wait, 1, 2, 3 corners from the finish line. And there's one guy walking up, kind of stumbling up, and there's one volunteer there. And she's like, it was like, the guy, you can do it, man. And it was like a block island out there. And I was thinking to myself, wow, this is crazy, that there's people out in the darkness on that running and just fighting through this thing right now, trying to get, there's a little over an hour left, and they probably got 4 miles or something left. And they're out there by themselves with a headlamp and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I was walking the street where I heard you screaming in the distance, but I couldn't see you. And you're like egging me on to finish, and I could just hear your voice echoing through the Capitol, and all these cool memories just come back. And I don't know, man, it's just something magical about that whole, that Capitol Square and just that finish line and everything like that for me.
It was a great experience, as always. I mean, yeah, we can nitpick about things, and the more you do this, the more you can find the nitpick, because you've been doing so many. You've done a lot, and you've been to a lot, and so you're always going to find something you don't like. But it's a special place. It's a special place. It's a special finish. They all are, right? Everybody sees different races different ways. Like, this is the first Ironman I've ever been to where I didn't spend 1 second at the finish line. Not a second. I didn't even go to it. I didn't even see it. I didn't look at it. Generally I like to stand, like, a little bit a ways from the finish, like a half mile. Like, I kind of took up route at my bus stop where I've been, just because this finish line there's so much going on. It's just berserk. It's just bonkers. There's music cranking. There's people, cheering and ranting. It's hard to see, and people come down the finishing chute, and they've got a sea of, like, 100, 1,000 people are trying to pick out their family and their friends and people, and it's like, it's almost impossible. And so I like to kind of stand a bit of ways, like, at Chattanooga will be in the pedestrian bridge. And so when you see people that close, they're going to finish. They're going to finish. They're less than a mile away. And that's when you start to see, like, emotion. That's when I start, like, when I did that this last weekend, and it was so fascinating to me to watch people's emotions start to come over them as they made their way back up State Street for the first time. They take that left. They can see the lit Capitol, and you can, in the distance, just barely hear the cheers. And at that point, it's done. It's over. Yes, you have a little bit left to go, but you 100% know you're going to be an Ironman, and you can start to hear and feel and sense, like, all the emotions. And there were so many people that were running by and they were in tears, and it was such an interesting thing to watch. As you could just see all the past year or two, and the goals and the expectations, and like they started to well up in people, and it was it was like they finally got to like accept that I'm really going to do this today. Because like, listen, you've been doing this long enough. Every race, you don't really assume you're going to finish until you're on the red carpet, or you're so close that it's like inevitable and you could crawl your way to the finish line. And when they come up and they got to the top of State Street and they're coming in, and it's like it's done. You're done, right? It's just about making your way around the square. And it was just awesome, and it was fun to watch and see so many athletes and give them a high five and tell them I was proud of them for finishing and doing whatever, and then just kind of let them go soak in the moment. And it's quiet right there, and it's quiet on the course. But as soon as you kind of get that feeling and that sense of like, you get chills. Like it's not just going to happen, it's about to happen. In 5 minutes, I'm going to hit the red carpet and it's going to be over. Not just the race, but the months and the months and the years of training. And my family is going to be there. My friends are going to be there. Like the times I've ever gotten emotional on a course, it's never been at the finish line. It's always been like a mile before, where I know that where I can start, when I start to anticipate what I'm really going to feel and who I'm going to see. Like that's when I get overcome with emotion, is when I know I'm about to feel it, and you can kind of let yourself go because not really anyone else is around. At the finish line, everyone's around. Everyone's staring at you and clapping and cheering. You kind of get caught up in the moment. It's that like half mile before where you just see people, they finally like relax their shoulders, and they accept that it's over, and they're relieved, and they don't have to worry anymore. It's kind of like the very first time they let their guard down. And it's just fun to watch. It's fun to be around. It's fun to see people push themselves. It's fun to see people make their way through. It's fun to see people not give up. It's just great. It's incredibly rewarding, to do and to be around as a coach, just to watch not just athletes participate, but humans, live, and express themselves and do hard things. And in a world where, a lot of people are trying to take the easy way out and take the shortcut, and take accolades after 2 minutes. And it's about doing hard things. That's when you grow. That's when you become something different and someone different. The fabric of you changes when you go through something like that, no matter what happens. And it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch people kind of fast forward through life, in a way of like how much people can grow on race day versus just a regular day of the week where they clock in a 9 to 5 job and they go home and they feed the kids and they go to bed. It really is an opportunity and a chance to show yourself something and to prove to yourself something, and whether it goes great or whether you have a crappy day, and then you got to get back on your horse and do it all over again. It's just part of the journey. Because even if you have a great day, the first thing you're going to say is, I think I can go faster. I really think I can go faster. And then it's back up to work again. It's a great thing to be around of it. And I feel, I know you feel the same way. I feel very fortunate to be able to do this as something I do as a quote unquote career, and that we get to do it again. In 9 or 10 days here in Chattanooga, as we watch a huge part of our team come in our own city. It's fun. It's special. I'm so glad that these races are back, and I'm so glad that so many of you are about to experience that feeling, that finish line feeling here in the next few weeks.
Mm-hmm. And that finish line feeling, I was right at the finish line, and it's so cool. The finish line is downhill, and people are coming in, and they're so excited. And then I was like about 20 steps maybe be right in front of the finish line, and people would run in, and they're happy and like just smiling. When they hit about where I was, they would always kind of just, a lot of them would just sort of stop and kind of momentum it all the way in. But that was that every one of them hit that plant and slowed down just a little bit, either for a photo or whatever, and they cruise across. But you'd see that unbelievable, undeniable relief in their body, in their
relief.
It was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And now, like, and we talked about it before, but that moment, that's the ultimate example of being in the moment, because nothing matters right then. Nothing outside of what you just did.
All the pain goes away until you cross the finish line and you sit down or you shower later and get the chafing.
About everything. Yeah. and you're just doing it. All right, dude.
All right, to wrap it up, that has been it. That was 512. As always, if you haven't been or want to go on back, go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you have any questions about anything and everything, you can reach out to Mike. He is at crushingiron@gmail.com. And if you need anything from me, I'm at c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, dude. Hang on a second.
All
All right,
dude.
thanks everybody.